Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Your brain is not tired, broken, slow, or lacking talent. It is simply bored by the way you ask it to work. That sounds almost offensive, especially after years of hearing that focus requires discipline, motivation, or some kind of rare mental gift. Yet Richard Feynman, one of the most respected physicists in history, believed something radically different. He thought most people struggle to think clearly because they complicate what should be simple, worship formulas they do not understand, and confuse information with intelligence. Now here comes the irony. The exercises that sharpen attention are not hidden inside secret labs, elite universities, or expensive courses. They are embarrassingly basic, so basic that most people ignore them, assuming real mental power must look complex. Feynman laughed at that idea. He openly mocked intellectual showmanship and warned against sounding smart instead of thinking well. In his view, clarity was the ultimate proof of intelligence, not jargon, speed, or memory tricks. Here is where this video becomes uncomfortable in a good way. If your concentration feels scattered, the problem may not be distraction, technology, or lack of willpower. The problem may be how you approach thinking itself. Feynman argued that the mind becomes sharp when it is treated like a playground for curiosity rather than a storage room for facts. That single shift changes everything, from how long you can focus to how deeply you understand anything. Most videos promise fast results, magical routines, or neuroscience buzzwords. This one does the opposite. It strips thinking down to its bones. The exercises you are about to see do not require more time, only a different attitude. They work not because they are new, but because they force the brain to engage actively instead of consuming passively. That distinction matters more than any productivity hack you have ever tried. Think about how you usually learn. You listen, read, scroll, highlight, nod along, then move on. It feels productive, yet almost nothing sticks. Feynman saw this as a trap. He believed passive absorption creates the illusion of understanding, while active questioning reveals what the mind actually knows. That revelation can feel uncomfortable, even humbling, but it is the exact moment where real intelligence begins to grow. This video is not about turning you into a genius overnight. It is about sharpening what you already have. Focus is not something you force. It is something that appears naturally when curiosity leads the process. Feynman trusted curiosity more than discipline, play more than pressure, and honesty more than ego. Those values shaped how he thought, taught, and solved problems that most people considered impossible. Over the next sections, you will learn simple mental exercises inspired by that philosophy. Each one trains a different aspect of thinking: clarity, attention, reasoning, and self-awareness. None of them depend on age, background, or formal education. They depend only on willingness to notice how your own mind works, without pretending, rushing, or hiding confusion. If you expect dramatic music, complicated diagrams, or dramatic claims, you may feel disappointed at first. That reaction is normal. Simplicity often feels suspicious in a world addicted to complexity. But stay with this until the end. Many people report that one small shift completely changes how they read, listen, speak, and concentrate. Before moving forward, remember this. Feynman did not believe intelligence was a title you earn. He believed it was a habit you practice. The exercises ahead are tools, not rules. Use them lightly, experiment freely, and notice what changes. Pause for a second. Ask yourself one honest question. Do you want to sound smart, or do you want to think clearly? The answer determines everything that follows. If this introduction already challenged how you see focus and intelligence, stay here. The first exercise may feel too simple, but it is exactly where sharper thinking begins. Richard Feynman believed something that quietly terrifies most adults. If you cannot explain an idea in simple terms, you do not truly understand it. Not partially, not conceptually, not academically, at all. This belief became known later as the Feynman technique, although he never cared to name it. For him, it was not a method. It was a habit of intellectual honesty. Here is why this exercise sharpens focus so quickly. When you try to explain something simply, the brain can no longer hide behind memorized phrases or borrowed authority. There is no room for vague language, rehearsed definitions, or impressive-sounding terms. Every sentence exposes gaps in understanding. That exposure forces attention to lock in, because confusion becomes visible instead of abstract. Most people avoid this moment. They sense the discomfort and retreat back into reading, watching, or listening. Feynman did the opposite. He chased that discomfort with curiosity. When an explanation broke down, he did not feel stupid. He felt informed. The breakdown showed exactly where thinking needed work. That clarity is what makes this exercise powerful. To practice it, choose a concept you believe you understand. It can be anything: a work skill, a scientific idea, a personal belief, or even a rule you follow daily. Now imagine explaining it to a curious child who keeps asking one question only: why? Not aggressively, not sarcastically, just honestly. Every time you reach for a complex term, stop. Replace it with plain language. If you cannot, you have found the edge of your understanding. This process activates focus because it demands presence. The mind cannot wander while simplifying ideas. It must track meaning carefully, sentence by sentence. Each word matters. Each pause reveals something. Feynman often said that nature cannot be fooled. In the same way, your own mind cannot be tricked by decorative language. It knows when meaning is missing. There is another hidden benefit. Explaining simply builds mental confidence rooted in clarity, not performance. Many people fear looking foolish, so they cling to complexity. This exercise reverses that instinct. It teaches the brain that clarity is strength. Over time, thinking becomes calmer, more direct, and less cluttered by unnecessary noise. You might notice resistance at first. The urge to say, "I get it, I just cannot explain it right now," will appear. That sentence is a signal, not an excuse. It means the idea lives somewhere between familiarity and understanding. Feynman would sit with that tension, often writing explanations on paper until they became clean and honest. Writing slows thought just enough to expose shortcuts the mind tries to take. This exercise also trains attention by removing false certainty. When the brain realizes it does not fully understand something, curiosity awakens naturally. Curiosity sustains focus longer than discipline ever could. Instead of forcing concentration, you invite it by turning confusion into a puzzle. The mind loves puzzles when ego steps aside. Over time, something surprising happens. You start listening differently. While others nod along, you notice vague explanations immediately. You ask better questions, not to challenge people, but to clarify meaning. Reading becomes active instead of passive. You pause more often, not from distraction, but from engagement. That is what sharper thinking feels like. This habit does not require teaching others publicly. You can do it privately, in writing, out loud, or even mentally. The key is honesty. No skipping steps. No pretending clarity exists when it does not. Every simplified explanation strengthens neural pathways related to reasoning, memory, and focus. Complexity fades. Precision grows. Feynman warned against confusing knowing the name of something with knowing the thing itself. This exercise dismantles that illusion. It replaces surface familiarity with genuine comprehension. That shift alone can transform how effective your mind feels during work, study, or decision-making. Before moving on, try this now. Pick one idea you encountered recently. Spend 5 minutes explaining it in the simplest language possible. Notice where you hesitate. That hesitation is not failure. It is the doorway to sharper focus. If this exercise already made you rethink how well you understand things, pause the video, try it once, then return. The next section builds directly on what you just uncovered. One of the most dangerous enemies of clear thinking is familiarity. When something feels obvious, the brain stops examining it. Richard Feynman distrusted that feeling deeply. He believed that the moment an idea becomes obvious, curiosity shuts down and attention drifts into autopilot. This exercise exists to interrupt that drift and bring the mind back into active engagement. Questioning the obvious does not mean rejecting everything or becoming cynical. It means refusing to accept explanations simply because they sound reasonable or are widely repeated. Feynman often said that it is easy to fool yourself, and the hardest person to avoid fooling is yourself. That is why this exercise strengthens focus. It forces the mind to stay awake instead of relying on mental shortcuts. Most people move through daily life surrounded by assumptions they rarely notice. They accept rules, opinions, habits, and explanations without tracing them back to their origins. The brain likes this because it conserves energy. Unfortunately, what saves energy also dulls attention. When nothing is questioned, thinking becomes shallow, even when information is abundant. To practice this exercise, start small. Choose something you believe you understand well. Then ask a simple question. How do I know this is true? Not who said it, not where did I hear it, but how you personally know it holds up. If the answer relies on authority, repetition, or habit, keep going. Ask again. Each question pulls focus deeper into the structure of the idea. Feynman applied this constantly, even to basic concepts. He questioned definitions, measurements, and everyday explanations. Not to be difficult, but to see where meaning actually lived. When he taught physics, he avoided polished lectures at first. He preferred raw discussion because confusion revealed where attention needed to aim. This habit sharpens the mind because it replaces passive agreement with active inspection. The brain becomes alert when it senses uncertainty. That alertness is the foundation of focus. Instead of drifting through information, you start navigating it. Every assumption becomes a doorway, not a wall. There is emotional resistance here. Questioning the obvious can feel uncomfortable, especially when it touches beliefs tied to identity or routine. The mind may react defensively, trying to restore certainty quickly. Notice that reaction without obeying it. Feynman believed that living with temporary uncertainty was a sign of intellectual strength, not weakness. This exercise also reduces mental noise. Many distractions come from unresolved assumptions competing silently in the background. When you question them openly, they lose power. Attention stops scattering because the mind is no longer juggling hidden contradictions. Clarity replaces tension. Over time, you will notice changes in how you listen. Instead of absorbing statements whole, you automatically break them into parts. You hear structure, not just sound. You notice when explanation skips steps. That awareness keeps the brain engaged longer, especially during conversations, lectures, or reading. A practical way to train this habit is by keeping a simple question journal. Write down one statement you encountered during the day that sounded obvious, then spend a few minutes unpacking it. Ask what it assumes, what it ignores, and what would happen if it were false. You are not searching for a perfect answer, only for deeper contact with the idea itself. Feynman warned that certainty feels good, but often hides ignorance. This exercise teaches the brain to prefer clarity over comfort. That preference strengthens focus because attention thrives on meaningful friction. When thinking becomes active, boredom fades. By questioning what seems obvious, you reclaim ownership of your thoughts. Instead of inheriting ideas, you examine them. That examination trains mental endurance and precision at the same time. Focus stops being a struggle and becomes a byproduct of genuine curiosity. Before moving on, notice how many times today you accepted something without inspection. That awareness alone is progress. If this section made you rethink how often you run on autopilot, pause and write down one obvious belief you have. Question it gently, then return for the next exercise. Most people treat mistakes like evidence of failure. Richard Feynman treated them like information. This difference alone explains why some minds sharpen over time, while others become defensive and rigid. When errors are avoided, hidden, or ignored, thinking stalls. When they are examined calmly, focus grows stronger and understanding deepens. Feynman often said that learning happens fastest at the exact point where an idea breaks. That break exposes the limits of current understanding. Instead of rushing past it, he slowed down. He looked closely at what went wrong, not emotionally, but analytically. This approach turns mistakes into guides instead of threats, and that shift has a powerful effect on attention. The brain becomes distracted when it fears being wrong. It splits energy between thinking and self-protection. This exercise removes that internal conflict. By welcoming mistakes as data, attention becomes unified. All mental resources move toward comprehension instead of image management. To practice this exercise, you must first change how you label errors. Replace the idea of "I failed" with "This result tells me something." That language matters. The brain responds differently when an outcome is framed as feedback rather than judgment. Feynman believed that nature does not care about your confidence, only about whether your explanation matches reality. Start with something small. Choose a recent misunderstanding, wrong assumption, or incorrect prediction. Instead of brushing it aside, examine it. Ask what you expected to happen and what actually occurred. Compare the two carefully. The gap between them is where learning lives. That comparison demands focus because it requires holding multiple ideas in mind at once. This process trains sustained attention because it resists emotional shortcuts. The mind wants to either deny the mistake or move on quickly. Staying with it, calmly and curiously, strengthens mental endurance. Over time, this endurance makes focus feel natural rather than forced. Feynman applied this approach constantly in his work. He did not hide incorrect calculations. He displayed them openly, even humorously. Each wrong path taught him something about the structure of the problem. That attitude removed fear from thinking. When fear disappears, curiosity expands, and attention follows. There is also a practical benefit in daily life. When mistakes are examined instead of avoided, decision-making improves. You begin noticing patterns in your thinking. Certain assumptions repeat. Certain shortcuts mislead. This awareness sharpens judgment and reduces mental clutter. A simple way to practice is to keep a mistake log. Not a list of failures, but a record of insights gained from incorrect outcomes. Write what you expected, what happened, and what changed in your understanding. This habit trains the brain to stay engaged after disappointment, rather than shutting down or distracting itself. This exercise also builds intellectual humility, which Feynman valued deeply. Humility keeps the mind flexible. A flexible mind focuses better because it is not defending fixed positions. It can adjust, explore, and refine ideas without resistance. Another hidden advantage appears over time. As your relationship with mistakes improves, procrastination decreases. Much avoidance comes from fear of being wrong. When errors lose their emotional charge, starting becomes easier. Focus follows action, not the other way around. Feynman warned that confidence without understanding is dangerous. This exercise replaces false certainty with tested clarity. That clarity feels quieter, but far more stable. The mind no longer races to prove itself. It settles into observation and analysis. Before moving forward, think of one mistake you recently dismissed or avoided. Revisit it with curiosity. Ask what it revealed about your thinking. That question alone sharpens attention. If this section changed how you see mistakes, pause and write down one recent error and what it taught you. Then, continue when ready. Richard Feynman had little patience for mental clutter. He believed that most confusion does not come from complexity itself, but from unnecessary layers added on top of simple truths. When thinking feels heavy or scattered, the problem is often excess, not lack. This exercise trains the mind to remove what does not matter, leaving only what truly carries meaning. Focus weakens when the brain tries to hold too many details at once. Attention fragments, not because the mind is weak, but because it is overloaded. Feynman approached ideas like a sculptor. He chipped away anything that did not serve understanding. What remained was clean, functional, and powerful. That reduction is not simplification for its own sake. It is precision. To practice this exercise, begin with any concept you are trying to understand or explain. Write it down. Then ask a simple question. What is the core idea here? Not the examples, not the background, not the terminology. The core. If you remove everything else, what must remain for the idea to still make sense? This question immediately activates focus because it forces prioritization. The brain must decide what matters most. That decision requires active engagement. You cannot drift while stripping an idea down. Each cut demands judgment. Feynman used this approach constantly, especially when teaching. He would take complex subjects and reduce them to a few essential principles. Only after those principles were solid would he allow details back in. This order matters. When details arrive before structure, confusion follows. When structure comes first, details find their place naturally. There is resistance here. Many people equate intelligence with accumulation. More facts, more references, more explanations. This exercise goes in the opposite direction. It rewards restraint. It teaches the mind that clarity often appears when you remove information, not when you add it. A practical way to train this habit is through deliberate summarization. After reading or learning something, challenge yourself to explain it in 3 sentences, then reduce it to 1. Finally, try expressing it in a single clear idea. Each step strengthens focus by tightening the relationship between attention and meaning. This exercise also reduces mental noise. When the mind carries too many loosely connected ideas, it struggles to concentrate. By identifying the essence, you create a stable anchor. Attention naturally returns to that anchor instead of drifting across irrelevant details. Feynman believed that if you cannot describe the heart of an idea, you do not understand it yet. This belief was not judgmental. It was practical. The mind needs a center of gravity. Without it, thinking becomes scattered and focus feels exhausting. Another benefit appears in communication. When you learn to strip ideas down, conversations become clearer. You speak with purpose instead of excess. Listening improves as well, because you start hearing what others are really saying beneath their words. This awareness keeps the brain engaged instead of overwhelmed. This exercise also sharpens decision-making. Many poor decisions come from treating secondary details as primary. When you know the essence of a situation, choices become simpler. Focus strengthens because the mind is no longer wrestling with irrelevant factors. Over time, you may notice that your tolerance for unnecessary complexity decreases. This is a sign of mental sharpening, not impatience. Feynman often criticized explanations that sounded impressive, but explained nothing. He believed that true understanding feels lighter, not heavier. To practice today, choose one topic that feels confusing or overwhelming. Write everything you think is important about it. Then cross out anything that is not essential. Keep refining until only the core remains. That core is your focus point. This habit trains the brain to seek meaning instead of volume. Meaning sustains attention. Volume drains it. When the mind knows what matters, focus becomes effortless. Before moving on, pause and ask yourself, what idea in your life feels complicated only because it has never been reduced to its essence? Richard Feynman was famous not only for what he knew, but for how clearly he could explain it. He believed that teaching was not the final step of learning, but the engine that completed it. When you teach, the mind is forced to organize, test, and refine ideas in real time. This pressure sharpens focus in a way that silent study rarely does. Most people assume they must fully master something before sharing it. Feynman rejected that belief. He taught while learning, precisely because the act of explaining exposed weak points immediately. The brain cannot wander when it is responsible for making sense to someone else, even if that someone is imaginary. To practice this exercise, choose an idea you are currently learning or refining. Pretend you must explain it to another person without notes. You can speak out loud, write, or even record yourself. The format does not matter. What matters is commitment. Once you begin, do not stop to look things up. Let your understanding reveal itself honestly. This exercise trains focus because it creates accountability. The mind becomes alert, tracking logic, sequence, and clarity. Gaps appear quickly. Those gaps are valuable. They show exactly where attention needs to return later. Teaching turns vague familiarity into concrete structure. Feynman often prepared lectures by explaining topics to himself in simple language. If he stumbled, he knew more work was needed. This self-teaching loop kept his thinking sharp and his focus grounded in reality rather than confidence. Another reason this exercise works is emotional. Teaching engages purpose. The brain pays attention when it believes its effort matters. Even imagined listeners create that sense of meaning. Focus thrives on meaning more than pressure. Over time, this habit rewires how you learn. Instead of consuming information passively, you begin asking, how would I explain this? That question keeps attention active during reading, listening, and observation. Learning becomes interactive rather than absorbent. This exercise also strengthens memory. Explaining forces the brain to retrieve, organize, and connect ideas. These processes deepen neural pathways far more than repetition alone. Focus improves because the mind knows it will need to use the information, not just recognize it. There is vulnerability here. Teaching exposes uncertainty. Many avoid it for that reason. Feynman embraced it. He believed that pretending to understand helps no one, least of all yourself. This honesty keeps thinking flexible and focused. A simple way to apply this habit daily is to end each learning session with a brief explanation. Summarize what you learned as if someone asked you about it. Do not aim for perfection. Aim for clarity. Each attempt strengthens attention. You may notice that teaching changes how you listen to others as well. You become more attentive to structure, examples, and clarity. Passive listening fades. Active engagement replaces it. That engagement sustains focus naturally. This exercise also builds confidence rooted in understanding, not performance. When you know you can explain something, anxiety decreases. A calm mind focuses better than a tense one. Feynman valued calm curiosity over forced intensity. Before moving on, choose one small idea you learned recently. Explain it out loud in simple terms. Notice where you hesitate. That hesitation is your next focus point. At this point, one thing should be clear. Sharper thinking does not come from intensity, pressure, or dramatic effort. It comes from consistency and engagement. Richard Feynman believed the mind improves the same way muscles do, through regular use in the right way. The final two exercises bring everything together into a sustainable daily practice. The sixth exercise is deceptively simple. Think every day, even briefly, without external input. Most people fill every quiet moment with noise, music, videos, messages, updates. The brain rarely gets space to work with its own material. Feynman valued these quiet thinking periods deeply. He allowed ideas to move, combine, and settle without interruption. To practice this, choose a short window each day. 5 or 10 minutes is enough. No phone, no reading, no listening. Pick one question, idea, or problem, and sit with it. Let thoughts wander, but keep them anchored to that subject. This trains focus by strengthening the mind's ability to sustain attention without stimulation. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. Restlessness appears quickly. That restlessness is not failure. It is withdrawal from constant input. With practice, the mind begins to enjoy this space. Ideas become clearer. Connections appear naturally. Focus deepens because the brain is no longer dependent on novelty. Feynman often used walking as a thinking tool. Movement kept his body relaxed while his mind worked. You can do the same. The key is intentional thought, not passive drifting. Return gently to your chosen idea whenever attention slips. The seventh exercise complements the sixth. Replace passive consumption with active reflection. Most information enters the brain without effort and leaves just as easily. Feynman believed this was a waste of mental potential. He insisted on interacting with ideas, not just receiving them. To practice this, change how you engage with content. After reading, listening, or watching something, pause. Ask yourself what the main idea was, whether you agree, and how it connects to what you already know. Write a sentence if possible. This reflection turns input into understanding. This habit sharpens focus because it closes the loop. The brain knows it must respond, not just receive. Attention stays alert during consumption because it anticipates use. Over time, passive scrolling becomes less appealing. Active thinking becomes more satisfying. Together, these two exercises create a powerful rhythm. Quiet thinking strengthens internal focus. Active reflection strengthens external engagement. One builds depth. The other builds clarity. Combined, they form a daily training ground for the mind. Feynman lived this way naturally. He thought for pleasure, not performance. Curiosity guided his attention. He did not chase productivity. He chased understanding. That pursuit kept his mind sharp well into old age. You do not need to copy his lifestyle. You only need to adopt his attitude. Treat thinking as an activity, not a background process. Give it time, honesty, and space. The results appear quietly, but steadily. As you practice these exercises, notice how your relationship with focus changes. It becomes less about forcing attention and more about removing obstacles. Distraction fades when thinking feels rewarding. Before ending this video, pause for a moment. Ask yourself which of these exercises felt most natural. That one is your entry point. Start there. Add others gradually. Remember this: intelligence is not a trait you possess. It is a habit you practice. Feynman understood that deeply. That understanding shaped everything he did. If this video helped you see thinking differently, subscribe to the channel. Here we do not chase shortcuts. We train clarity, curiosity, and focus, one honest thought at a time.